1917 would be the year of the turning tide for the Central Powers. In March 1917, the Tsar was removed from power, and while the provisional government in Russia promised to continue the war, they were rapidly losing control of the Russian army, and a lot of the soldiers were supporting the pro-peace Bolshevik Party led by Vladimir Lenin. However, in April 1917, the United States joined the Entente in response to the Zimmerman telegram promising German support for a Mexican invasion of the United States, as well as the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare. So, can the Germans defeat what's left of the Russians, the French, and the British before the Americans are able to bring in enough forces to overwhelm the Germans? That will be the race of 1917. The Germans and Austrian-Hungarians would launch the Battle of Capeto in Italy. This would use new stormtrooper tactics against the Italians, pushing almost to Venice. This would be one of the biggest Central Power victories of the war, and caused the British and French governments to worry that Italy would leave the war. Italy, however, declared her commitment to continue the fight. The British and French launched the Battle of Passchendaele. This proves to be another massacre, with tanks getting stuck in the mud, and the Entente not able to gain a major victory. The Central Powers had yet more success when in October, the Soviet Union is formed under the command of Vladimir Lenin, taking over from the provisional government. And while this kicks off the Russian Civil War, it also means that the government in charge of Russia is seeking to leave the war. It would, however, take until March for a final peace treaty to be signed between the Soviet Union and the Central Powers. Will that be enough time for Germany to pull something off on the Western Front? The British would attempt to use the time that they had before the Russians left the war to launch the Battle of Cambrai. This would end up being a failure despite making initial successes. The problem was, no one had prepared for tanks to fight within the close streets of villages. This battle, however, used combined arms warfare, involving airplanes, tanks, infantry, and cavalry, with the goal of punching a hole in the German line and launching an attack to exploit that. Well, it would fail in this particular instance, it would become the foundation for the blitzkrieg tactics that would be used with such effect in the next World War. As a minor win, the British do end the year by conquering the city of Jerusalem from the Ottoman Empire. However, everyone is waiting. What does Germany have planned next? 1918 begins with Germany desperate to win on the Western Front before the United States is able to bring in enough forces to make a decisive difference. They believe that if they attack early enough, in spring 1918, they will be able to achieve this, and they will be able to knock the Western Allies out of the war. This is particularly important since Germany's own allies, the Ottoman Empire and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, are on the verge of collapse. And the Austrian-Hungarian Empire had already reached out to the Entente, seeking a potential separate peace. On March 21st, 1918, the Germans finally broke the stalemate on the Western Front. They launched the Kaiserschlacht, or the Spring Offensive. This used combined arms warfare and stormtrooper tactics to break the stalemate and push further than anyone had pushed since 1914. This proved to be a truly desperate time for the Entente, and they needed to beg Pershing, the American general in France, and Woodrow Wilson, the American president, to allow American troops to fight in the battle. The Americans allowed some to fight, but General Pershing held back as many troops as he could to form his own American army. On July 18th, the German offensive finally ground to a halt. This was it. The Central Powers was spent. The Ottoman Empire was retreating all the way back to the border of modern Turkey in the Middle East. The Austrian Empire was torn apart by revolution and no longer able to maintain its front against Italy. On August 8th, the Entente launched the 100 Days Offensive, where they pushed the Germans all the way back past the vaunted Hindenburg defensive line, which they had built before the spring offensive. The Central Powers were defeated. Their armies were spent. The Austrian-Hungarian and Ottoman empires had already collapsed. The German Empire could no longer fight, and was beginning to crumble from revolution. The Kaiser was forced to abdicate, and they signed an armistice on November 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, thus ending the First World War.